Good morning, everyone. Should we wait for 5 more minutes? Shall we start?
Yes, please.
I just start sharing my screen. So what I've done is, if you can see, I have just created a new project wherein what I did is I have copied the maxilla, mandible, and the datum plane, the cut plane basically that we did for our 1 centimeter cut, and the mandible section. We won't be needing anything other than that to, uh, start with our implant design. So yesterday we had completed a surgical guide, and we know that after,
Ma'am,
yes,
Dr. Sujay wants to connect, but we are
one
not
sec.
accepting.
Yes, I think now we can start. Um, so yes, coming back to this, yesterday we had completed the surgical guide, wherein from that we came to the conclusion that this is going to be our cut, and we will have to remove the condyle section as well, right? So after taking the cut, we will have this much section of the mandible remaining, right? Now we have to reconstruct or you know design a PSI for the resected bone. So here this also involves that we have to design the condyle. For that, in the earlier sessions, if you remember, we had isolated the condyle for the same patient, right? So what I'm now going to do is I am going to import that, and while I import that, I'm also going to the surface. Like today, we'll understand the importance of why splitting surfaces for some STL components are essential, right? So when I'm going to open this right condyle, I've imported the part. I'm going to split the surface The angle I'm going to keep is at 20 degrees. So this 20 degree I came up after trial and error. Like first I tried 30, then I tried 10, other different angles, and then I realized that 20 is suiting my requirement particularly well. So I'm going to split the angle of the surfaces at 20 degree, and I'm going to import. So the condyle is here. What I'm doing is I'm just hiding this other components so we can see how it has split the surface. So it has split the bottom surface into different components, right? And somewhere else also you can see small triangle surfaces. Basically what it does is, based on a triangle normals, it calculates 20 degree with respect to each triangle normal and splits the surface accordingly. So we wanted this bottom surface separately, so that's the reason I have imported the surface. If I would have just copied my condyle from Mimix to Threematic, this option would not be possible. And that's the reason there is an option of export. Like somebody was asking me a day before that why do you have to export when you can just copy paste it. There are two reasons why you have the export option in Mimix. One is uh, like you just don't generally use Threematic as a CAD designing software. There are other freewares also like Mesh Mixer, Blender. You know, you can take the STL, exported STL into those files, into those CAD designing softwares, and do whatever further necessary actions you want to do on the STL. Or in sometimes what happens is you require these split surfaces, right? Not one complete surface. That time for Threematic also, it is ideal that you first export from Mimix and then import with the split surfaces option, right? So now I have my right condyle, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to improve this surface because it's quite heavy. So I'll go to fix, improve mesh, and I'll just click apply. Right, so yes, we have our surface. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to align the condyle, right? So I'm going to first duplicate this condyle, and this I'm going to mention as realigned condyle, right? So let me just change the color of this realigned condyle, right? So I'm going to align. Since we have to replace the condyle section of the resected bone, that's the reason I am realigning it, right? Because I think condyle placement is of utmost importance other than anything. So we'll first do that. What I am doing is I'm considering this depth that you see here as my landmark. So I'm first aligning with respect to that. Once I'm okay with the translation, I am now going to rotate. Since I had kept the depth as my landmark, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to keep my center of rotation at that angle or that point and then rotate. When I do that, now I'm going to check the profile view and see how much have we corrected. It needs further angulation or further translation. So let me first translate it further. Translate it further here. Now I'm going to check the profile view. So this seems fine to me. After I've set it manually, what I'm now going to do is I'm going to create a mirror reference, right? just to see how much alignment, how much, my alignment is correct, or just for reference. So I'm just, for the mirror, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the original mandible, however, so we can get our alignments correct. Again, for mirror, we'll require a plane about which we would want to mirror. So I'm going to take a sagittal plane. Again, for plane, we'll have to go to design, create analytical primitive, create datum plane. I'm again going to use the 3-point option and create a central plane. I'm going to see from the anterior view. So for now, this looks okay. I'll just create, and now what I'll do is I'll just expand it. Yes. And now what we'll have to do is we'll have to align better. So that's my datum plane, that's my center axis. Seems better. Right. We still seems better. Back to the front view. Yes, this plane seems central to me. So I'm going to use this plane as my mirroring plane, right? You will find the mirror option under align. So I go to align, mirror, right? My entity will be mandible because that is the part I would want to mirror. My mirror plane will be the datum plane I've created. Let me just rename this as datum plane for mirror, right? So, and I'm going to create copy. I want a copy of it. If you don't click copy, what it does is it for just for the original model, it will work directly on the original model and not retain your original model. So having always a copy works. Yes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide like this. I'm going to hide the maxilla and change the color of the mirrored entity. So I'm just going to rename this as mandible mirror. So this is your mirrored segment. If you want to see better, I'm going to hide this section. This was supposed to be a cut section. So you can see the difference. But if you see there's some slight error with the mirror, so what we'll have to do is we'll have to set the mirror again. Now we'll have to set the mirror with respect to the maxilla and the mandible, the original mandible. So let us understand where the error is coming. So I see here somewhere there's an extra bulge. So let's align that. My main entity should be the mirror, mandible mirror. I'm going to keep my point of rotation here. if you see, the condyles are also rotating slightly. We're getting reference planes. Now we need to slightly rotate it behind. So, yes, seems good to me. But if we do that, what you observe is here we have lost. So I have to undo that. I'm going to shift my center of rotation here. Okay. And try and align the other condyle section.
मैम इसमें कोई पॉइंट रजिस्ट्रेशन का ऑप्शन
You can do point registration in this, but what happens is ये जो आपका alignment रहता है ना, आपको with respect to ये करना पड़ेगा. Like इसमें सुपर इम्पोज करके एग्जैक्टली फायदा नहीं होता. क्यों? क्योंकि आपको शेप लेना है. तो यू हैव टू कॉम्पनसेट फॉर द इरेगुलर शेप दैट यू आर सीइंग हियर. सो लेट मी हाइड द maxilla and show this. योर आइडियल करेक्शन इज आपको सिर्फ हेल्दी एनाटॉमी वाले रीजन पे उसको मैच करना है. क्यों? क्योंकि आपको जो ये शेप है, जो रिमेनिंग शेप है, वो आपको क्रिएट करना है खुद से, राइट? तो इफ आई वर टू हाईलाइट दिस, हाउ डू एक्सप्लेन? एक सेकंड. Let me just cut this mirrored mandible also with the datum plane. I'm just cutting this using the same cut plane I used for the actual model. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this. I'm going to hide this. मैं इसका ये वाला साइड हाइड करूंगी एंड इसका जो राइट वाला सेक्शन है वो बेसिकली आपका ये you don't have to actually completely align to this. Your target is such that कि जो मिरर हो रहा है वो जो आपका साइड रिटेन हुआ है उसको मैच होना चाहिए, irrespective to the side you want to create. Because at recreation side you will what we say you will look into the whatever nuances या जो भी प्लस माइनस है वो आप एज अ प्रोसेस कर लोगे. बट आपका ये जो एक्चुअल एनाटॉमी जो रिटेन करोगे आप उसको मैच होना चाहिए. So our main target remains this, that जो mirrored mandible है we want to match this anatomy. एंड एंड पॉइंट रजिस्ट्रेशन क्यों डिफिकल्ट है? क्योंकि आपने साइड को what we say you have reversed the sides, like left is right, right is left, right? So again your points will not match correctly. You can take the help of your chin point but will not help much. चाहिए तो मैं इसका ग्लोबल रजिस्ट्रेशन करती हूँ एक बार, क्योंकि पॉइंट्स मैच करने के लिए ज्यादा नहीं है. वी कैन डू ग्लोबल रजिस्ट्रेशन स्टिल. सो आई एम गोइंग टू टेक दिस, do global registration. That's my fixed entity, that's my moving entity. So if you see उसने hardly कुछ movement किया है. I'm going to redo this. So you can try registration options, but वो it's like equally आपको बाद में उसको वापस थोड़ा align rotate करना ही पड़ेगा उसके बाद भी. So I'm going to delete these. So if you remember, we had matched this condyle. जो मैंने realigned condyle है वो ये किया है. So now keeping that as my reference point and keeping the anatomy that we have retained, the mandible, right, I'm going to now again reset the mandible mirror. Just, I'm going to now try and match this curvature. Approximate idea, right? Now I'm just going to hide all my other parts. And visualize the mandible with respect to maxilla and the condyle segment. So if you see, this seems slightly ahead, slightly, there it is. If I come to the other side, so they almost fit the slot. So I'm going to retain this as my reference mirror. Right now I'm going to see my realigned condyle. So when I see with my original left, the condyle that we have created matches the is almost matches the contours of the original. So I'm just going to keep this as is. So we're going to finalize this mirror. Now what I want to highlight is when you import the right condyle from the from mimics, you can align it here, right? But you have to notice that the shape at your left side will of course be different than your right. So for that you'll have to always mirror it. So I forgot to mention this step, that just like we have mirrored the mandible, we'll also have to mirror the condyle. For that I'm again going to mirror it now. So mirror right condyle, same mirror plane I'm going to keep. I'm going to hit apply. So you see it's higher. What I'm now going to do is So now we have our, let me just check now the position of the final condyle, which we have obtained from mirroring. Right, this seems okay here, but the angle does not seem correct to me. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to keep my point of rotation here. Seems better. I'm going to see the posterior view once again. Yes, this alignment seems better. So I'm going to maintain this as is. Right. So let me just summarize till here. I know this can be a little confusing. So what we first did is we have
मैम
हाँ बोलो ना
अगर राइट कॉन्डाइल को इधर मिरर करने की क्या जरूरत होगी, मतलब
हाँ
अगर
एग्जैक्टली
डायरेक्टली अगर हमें मिमिक्स में तो पेशेंट का कॉन्डाइल तो ठीक है, लेफ्ट साइड का भी
हाँ
पोजीशन,
राइट
तो वहीं वहीं से हम लोग उसको
तो दिस
मतलब
इज हाँ हाँ
कॉन्डाइल को
नो नो सो आई गेट दैट
उसका एक कॉपी बना के, यस मैम।
हाँ नहीं नहीं मैं ये आपको आई एम व्हाट यू से हाईलाइटिंग बोथ द थिंग्स यहाँ पे आपका पेशेंट का कॉन्डाइल प्रिजर्व्ड है अच्छा है जस्ट इन केस अगर आपका सिर्फ राइट साइड या कोई भी जो भी हेल्दी साइड है उसका प्रिजर्व्ड होगा तो आप कैसे कर पाओगे वो मैं आपको ऑल्टरनेटिव्स
ओके
पहले से ही बता रही हूँ इसमें
ओके ओके
like I'm addressing both the concepts wherein you have a healthy anatomy wherein you do not have see when you have it ना तो जैसे इसके लिए अगर हम नेचुरल इससे करते तो what would have ideally done is ये जो मैंडिबल का आपको दिख रहा है मैं इसको मिरर भी नहीं करती टेक्निकली मैं सिर्फ उसके यहाँ से कट कर देती बिकॉज आई नो दिस इज अ गुड हेल्दी लुकिंग कॉन्डाइल अच्छे से प्रिजर्व्ड है so in such cases what we do is we just cut such this section or how much ever we think that is required for me to recreate my psi and accordingly we proceed but just in case the mandible tumor has destroyed the condyle या fracture हो चुका है मतलब it is very brittle या bone loss हो चुका है condyle में भी in those cases what we do is we first draw the healthy anatomy I think इसका original मैंने preserve नहीं किया था so I'll just repeat the steps so what we'll do is in case the condyle is not preserved for the diseased anatomy section also what we'll first do is we'll incorporate the cut section of the condyle from the healthy anatomy right uh, then we will based on the mandible we'll try and replace it realign it with the defected side okay once we're done with that we'll create a mirror plane using the mirror plane now we'll mirror the condyle as well as the mandible to get a good reference so reason for creating a mirrored mandible we'll come to know when we proceed further but our main aim will be to get a proper aligned condyle so which we have retained right so we have got this now going forward I have my cut section so now we know ki we have to create a psi between these two contours right so what we'll do is further moving again psi आप पूरे mandible का तो नहीं बनाओगे like your tooth starts somewhere here so your height of or your height of your implant will somewhere be approximately at this region so what I'm now going to do is I'm going to duplicate this mandible and demarcate the region मुझे जहां तक PSI banana hai. Basically, I'm going to demarcate or create a contour for myself, a reference contour. So assuming this section is here, I'm going to, so how I'm going to demarcate, let me highlight that. मैं surface में जाऊंगी. I'm going to create a surface for myself. I'm going to use, you can use either polyline, you can use elliptical patch, rectangular patch, freeform patch. I'm going to use polyline patch. Okay. I'm going to select my entity as mandibular duplicate and switch to visible path. I want to create it somewhere at this juncture. So I'm just going to split that anatomy, right? Something like this. So wherever my marking went, it has created a surface there. अगर आपको दिख रहा होगा तो. And each surface it creates a contour along with it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to merge the remaining surfaces that it has created extra. For merging, what I'm doing is first I'll go to filter, I'll select my entity as surface, and then I'll start selecting the surface by pressing control, and I'm going to merge this. Right. I want my bottom and this middle section to be a continuous contour. So again, I'll go to surface and I'm going to merge this surface. Now, why I've been working for the contours, we'll understand in the next step, right? So I am now going to recreate or reconstruct the anatomy that we have resected. So for that, I'm going to do design and anatomy reconstruction. For anatomy reconstruction, if you see in the properties window, the input is a contour 1 and contour 2. Now, contour is what I told you, the borders of the surfaces that we create becomes my contour. So, right, that's the reason if you see, I had created a contour that I would want to stick. So this is the height I would want my implant to recreate. So this is my contour 1. My contour 2 would be the bottom of this condyle. But if you see, it's not taking the input. You in the logger, you can see error. Contour 1 and contour 2 must belong to the same part. What does that mean? That means anatomy reconstruction can be performed only for entities that belong to one common part. So for that, we'll have to merge this. So I would want to preserve the original. So I'm just going to duplicate this here, hide it, and I'm going to merge it. How do you merge? You select both the entities together using control, right click. In the drop down, you'll find merge option. So you have your merged entities. Now they've become a common part. Right now, again, I'm going to design anatomy reconstruction. This forms my contour 1. I've selected the wrong contour. I want this contour. This is my contour. My contour 2 becomes this one. So the moment you see, I have given the inputs of contours. Imaginary red line has come. What does line indicates? It indicates that your mandible will form under this section. But we would want to recreate the anatomy as is, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on our mirrored mandible. I am going to transparent this. Now using this as my reference, I am going to edit that line. So I'm just giving it a good, right? So now you would see this is center line that has formed. I'm going to edit this center line. So I come to length 1. I get a scale. I'm just going to increase. I would want you to observe that the shape of the line is changing. And I think this seems good to me. Yeah. Then I go to length 2. If you see, it's going quite oblique. We would want it a slightly lower. So I'm going to adjust the lower section. Now this seems okay to me. This is the importance of creating a mirrored mandible so that you get a reference for editing the center line. right? If you see, ये काफी बाहर गया है, so I'll go here and I'll try and select this. So if you notice, you can't completely maintain the anatomy as is. You have to choose which section you want to retain and how. So let's just select OK and try and see what we get as per these contours. I'm going to hit apply. So you can change your detail level. So what does detail level means? It basically indicates the quality of your mesh. जो रहता है high, low, and medium or fine, very fine. The higher the detail you select, the heavier the file becomes. So let's just select medium right now, right? And I'm going to click apply. So yes, I'm going to hide my mirrored mandible. So you can see we've received a good base. Maxilla. Right. So this is one way of creating your base, right? The other way is, before proceeding to the other, have you understood anatomy reconstruction or till the processes that I've explained till now? Any doubts in that? Assuming that everything is clear till here, I will go ahead. So one option of recreating the resected section is anatomy reconstruction. Now there are other ways also where you can reconstruct and the anatomy that you've resected. So since less than a minute for this meeting to end is left, what we'll do is I'll just end the meeting for all of us and I'll just rejoin in 2 minutes so we can proceed further. So all of us can rejoin in 2 minutes and then we can start.